Before we begin our press conference, I request Honorable Sikyong, Dr. Lobsang Sangye, to kindly launch the Thank You India souvenir, which is to be presented to the Government of India. Also, I request Honorable Sikyong again to launch the Thank You India calendar. Thank you, India. Thank you all so much, and I now request Information Secretary Ms. Darun Shaling to take over.
Thank you, Yankila. Good morning, everyone. Members of the press, very special guest, Honorable Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangye, International Relations Secretary Sunam Nupatakula, Minister for Education, Religion and Culture, Venerable Kamagili Yutola, Representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama based in Delhi, Kungudula, Secretary for Education Kamasengila, Delhi Bureau Secretary Kungevula, my two colleagues, Yangila and Chimila, and a lot of staff members have come from the Bureau Office, from Dharamsala, DIR Media, and all the members of the Indian press. Thank you all for coming and being a part of the formal launch of the Thank You India 2018 campaign, which is a very significant undertaking of the Central Tibetan Administration under the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it is an endeavor that will see the culmination of the coming together of the leadership of the Tibetan administration and the Tibetan people across India. Before we actually dwell into the details of the year-long campaign, I would like to request Honorable President of Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Sangye, to brief the press in this regards.
Hello, everybody. 31st March 1959 is the day when His Holiness the Dalai Lama entered India through Arunachal Pradesh. So 31st March of this year will be the beginning of the 60 years since the occupation of Tibet. So it's been 60 years, sadly, that Tibet has remained under the occupation of People's Republic of China, and 60 years of political repression, 60 years of economic marginalization, and 60 years of cultural assimilation, environmental destruction, population transfer. So on the one hand, it's a sad and tragic chapter of Tibet's history. Having said that, since coming to exile in the last 60 years, because of the support of the international community, but particularly this great country, India, Tibetans are still standing in the soil of this great land, India. And because of the support of the Indian people and the government and the country, 60 years have been a great journey. And as His Holiness Dalai Lama himself says, he is the son of India, because in the last 60 years, he has eaten or taken delicious dal, roti and bhat that he is physically made in India. And also he says he is a son of India because the wisdom, the knowledge that he shares around the world is based on ancient Indian wisdom, based on Nalanda tradition. Now when His Holiness Dalai Lama says he is the son of India, obviously the people who are standing here or sitting here and my colleagues who have joined and all the people in India are the children of India, because we all were born and brought up in India. In fact, subsidized through our subsidized schools, through our subsidized settlements, and also educated by Indian teachers and helped by Indian staff members. In that sense, the democracy that we have adopted in the Tibetan administration, in the Tibetan society, which is a very unique one, because even though we are in exile, we are refugees without our country, but this is a thriving democratic system. I know the winter session is going to start, but if you compare the Tibetan parliament and the Indian parliament, you might find our parliament equally robust, but perhaps a little more polite. And the democracy also we learn from India. And most importantly, the path that we follow, the Tibetan movement, is also based on ahimsa, a Gandhian ahimsa, is a non-violent one. In that sense, in the last 60 years, we have been good guys. We follow ahimsa, we follow democracy, and we follow dialogue as the means to solve the issue of Tibet. Our presence in the World Forum, even today, is because of India. If you go back to 1970s and 80s, where Tibet was some referred to as a dead issue or a non-issue, hardly any news media or hardly any leader around the world mentioned or raised the issue of Tibet. But because of India and the support of the Indian government and the people of India, we persevered. Through resilience and determination, we work very hard in the soil of India. Hence, we are still standing and we are still speaking out on the issue of Tibet. And recently, His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks a great deal about reviving Nalanda tradition in India. This story reflects the resilience of the Tibetan people. After the occupation of Tibet in 1950s and 60s, 98% of Tibetan monasteries and nunneries were destroyed. 99.9% of Tibetan monks and nuns were disrobed. Imagine a scenario in your own individual case when the odds against you is 98% or 99%. The chances that you have is only 1% or 2%. That was the situation. But under the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama, exiled Tibetans, the senior monks and nuns who fled Tibet, came to India, rebuilt our monasteries and nunneries brick by brick, stone by stone in India. And now, all the major monasteries that were destroyed in Tibet have been rebuilt and revived in India. And not just that, if you go through the Himalayan belt, from Sikkim to Ladakh to Nepal, Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh, to Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, Buddhism has been revived in the Himalayan belt. And as His Holiness Dalai Lama has traveled to 50 plus countries, he has revived Nalanda tradition around the world. And now, inside Tibet also, in their own social and private space, mainly because of Tibetan people's own assertion, we have revived Buddhism in Tibet. Of course, there is a policy of repression and systematic destruction of Tibetan monasteries and nunneries. As we speak, Yachingar is being destroyed. Yachingar is a nunnery with 5,000 to 6,000 nuns. Larungar Monastery had 12,000 monks and nuns. And last year, till August of this year, it was demolished and reduced to 5,000 monks and nuns. Of course, the Chinese government repressive policies of destruction is happening. But in private social space, Tibetans have revived Buddhism in Tibet as well. Now, oddly, in a way it's a good thing that China has become the largest Buddhist country in the world. They have 300 to 400 million Buddhists in China. So it's oddly, why I say oddly, is because in India, the land where Buddhism originated has few percent who are Buddhist. But China, which adopted Buddhism from India, has become the largest Buddhist country in the world. Hence, as a gift from Tibetan people, His Holiness the Dalai Lama wants to revive ancient Indian wisdom back in India that we preserve. Because there are around 14 Buddhist countries in the world, and 50 or so plus countries where major population practice Buddhism. But if you go to all these Buddhist countries, including in China or any of the neighboring countries, if you want to find the actual text of what Buddha said, or what his followers said, in none of these Buddhist countries you will find more than 24 volumes of what Buddha or his followers said. It's only in Tibetan language you will find 300 plus volumes of what Buddha has said and what his followers have said. So, hence, in Tibetan language, the Buddhism is preserved. So, this is the gift we want to give back to India as well. So, other than reviving the ancient Indian wisdom of Nalanda tradition and Buddhist civilization, and we would like to convey to this great land and people of India that you should be proud that among 60 million refugees around the world, from Syria, if you look at the story of Syria or anywhere, from 60 million refugees in diaspora around the world, Tibetan refugees is a success story. It's a democratic system. The literacy rate of Tibetan community in exile below the age of 60 is 94%. So if you compare to any of the South Asian countries, I think literacy rate is highest among Tibetans. And as far as their economic condition is concerned, even though we are refugee in India, Tibetans are very hardworking and law-abiding. At this time of the year, if you go to Lal Killa or any of the major towns and cities of India, you will find Tibetans selling cardigans or sweaters. If you go to Ludhiana, if you ask them lalas, for the last 40 years, Tibetans have been doing this transaction and getting loans from lalas without collateral, without lawyers, without agreements. This is on a piece of paper. Lalas in Ludhiana give you sweaters and loan for 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakhs. The Tibetans return. 99.9% of Tibetans return on time. So this is the Tibetan people, are law-abiding, honest residents of India. So hence India also should be proud that you have hosted us, for which we are very, very grateful. Because of you, we are standing today. But while we are standing, we have been law-abiding residents. We have been honest and productive residents of India, and also revive our own culture, own civilization. And also, we are standing here today as a major non-violent movement that is being, looked up to by many conflict regions around the world. So, in a nutshell, I can say that the very Tibetan civilization is based on Indian civilization. Very scripture, Kaka Khanga, we have gotten rid of Anga, but Kaka Khanga, Cha Cha Chanya is the Tibetan script. And the democracy we have adopted is also based on Indian democracy. Ahimsa also is a Gandhian ahimsa, and we all are educated and brought up in India. So nowadays, Prime Minister Modi ji talks a lot about Make in India. And by that definition, the original Made in India will be the Tibetan movement. So if Make in India is to succeed, I think Tibetan freedom struggle based on ahimsa and non-violence should succeed. Hence, we want to thank this whole coming year to this great nation and to this great people, and at the same time appeal and request, nudge a bit to support us politically and make Tibet a co-issue for India, because China says Tibet is a co-issue for them. But if you go by history, there's 3,000 plus long kilometers of border that often news media included and intellectuals talk about border with China. It was never a border with China. It was always a border with Tibet. Doklam is much talked about, but the term Doklam is a Tibetan word. It's neither Chinese nor Indian word. It's a Tibetan word. It means either a difficult mountain or a difficult road. Doklam. So hence the border between India and Tibet was there for centuries. And it was a peaceful border. Not even a single Chinese sepoy or army was there for centuries. Hence, for various reasons, China says Tibet is their co-issue, and Indian government and people of India should also say that Tibet is a co-issue for India, because India has the legitimacy to raise the issue of Tibet, and Indian government has the credibility to raise the issue of Tibet, because the largest number of Tibetans have been in India. And Indian government and people of India can say, we also have a stake. Our civilization is similar, our culture is similar, our script is similar, democracy is similar, non-violence is similar, and His Holiness Dalai Lama himself called himself, as I said, the son of India. And we are the children of India. So we came here, rather my parents and His Holiness Dalai Lama came here 60 years ago. It's time we go back home as well. So while we say thank you to India, we also want to appeal for support from this great land and people of India. So with that note, I want to thank all of you for coming today. And beginning March 31st, we'll have lined up many events where His Holiness will have interfaith prayer at Rajghat, and then we'll have a major public event at Tigeraj Stadium, and at IIC. So if you want to see piece of Tibet that we have preserved, if you want to see little Tibet that we have preserved, please come to IIC. And if you really want to see how Tibetan administration is doing, which Indian people and India can be very proud of, come to Dharamsala. And I can assure you, the air is much better than Delhi. And the weather is also much better than Delhi. So even though we've been in Dharamsala for 60 years, there we act more as your host and welcome you as our guest. So please do come to Dharamsala any time of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Dr. Sangye, for providing a deep insight into how and why we came about launching this year-long campaign. I'd now like to request the International Relations of the Department of Information and International Relations, Kong Sunam Nobudakula, who's also the chair of the organizing committee of the Thank You India organizing group, to give a preview of the series of pan-India 12-month events that would mark the Thank You India campaign.
Namaskar, everybody. As President Lobsang Sangye has given you an overview of the Thank You India program, I would like to say that under the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama and under the guidance of the Central Tibetan Administration, Tibetans in India would like to organize a year-long Thank You India program all over India. Why we would like to express our gratitude to the government and people of India is that since His Holiness the Dalai Lama came to India in 1959, we are in India for the last 60 years, and because of the support and help of the government of India and the people of India, Tibetans are able to preserve and promote our religion, culture, and identity. We were able to stand our own feet because of the support of the government and people of India. which is being destroyed in India, it's being preserved, and from India, it's being spread all over the world. And another important thing is the basic freedom struggle of the Tibetan people is also based on non-violence and ahimsa, which was taught to us by the great leader of India, Mahatma Gandhi, and Indian leaders. And our freedom struggle also carries on the basis of non-violence. And from India, we have been able to go around in the international community to resolve the Tibet issue through non-violence and freedom struggle. And because of that, what we are today, the 6 million Tibetans in Tibet and about 150,000 Tibetans in exile, what we are today is because of the support and help of the people of India and the government of India. So because of that one, for the 60th year of our exile in India, we'd like to express our gratitude to the government and people of India. For this, we have, as Darun Shinling said, we have an organizing committee and advisory committee headed by Dr. Lobsang Sangye, and we are going to organize various programs and events all over India, and that will have a great impact on the Tibetan people and also to the people and government of India. So the whole program, the basic programs will be in Delhi, which will start on the 31st of March, where His Holiness Dalai Lama and Indian religious leaders and Tibetan monks and nuns will have a prayer at Rajghat, and then we have a one-day mega program at Tegraj Sports Stadium, and then 3 days program at ICC. Now this will be replicated in other important Indian cities like Bangalore, Simla, and other states. And another important thing is that Tibetans are settled in about 11 states, and now Tibetans are also living in different cities doing businesses. Wherever Tibetans are living, they will also organize various programs and events to thank the Indian government and Indian people and the individual states. So this is some of the programs which we have. There we have a series of programs, and then that Ms. Dadunla will be telling you about some of the important programs which we envisage. And as I said, Tibetan people, Tibetan settlement offices, Buddhist monasteries, hospitals, schools, all these Tibetan institutions will be commemorating this Thank You India program throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kongtakula. Besides what's already been conveyed by President Dr. Sangye and my colleague Snam Nobudapula, I will dwell on a unique component to the campaign. It's not just something that takes place on the ground. So this time, Tibetans in India will thank India both on ground and on the virtual space as well. So we will be doing a lot of social media campaigns as well. So we'd like to flag up a few of the hashtags which you could all keep a track on. So it's hashtag Thank You India 2018. Apart from that, we will be on Twitter at NetTibet. We'll be on Facebook at the Central Tibet Administration, on Instagram at Tibet.net, and there's a standalone blog page as well. It's Tibet.net /Thank You India 2018. So what happens on ground and on social media simultaneously will be marking a series of important days, commemorations, celebrations, anniversaries, during which there will be mass campaigns initiated by Tibetans and will join important initiatives of the government of India as well. So on May 29 this year, we have a major campaign called the Pray for India. May 29 is important because it's the 15th day of Lord Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death as well, a very auspicious day for Buddhists across the globe. So on this particular day, as Dr. Sangye said, we have revived the monasteries and nunneries that were destroyed in Tibet and had been reconstructed in India. So Tibetan monasteries and nunneries across India will observe an interfaith prayer meeting titled Pray for India, where Buddhist nuns and monks will join people of different faith and will pray for India's success and for the well-being of the Indian people. So this kind of prayer meetings do have an impact. They do have a spiritual bearing on this great country and its people. On June 5, which is the World Environment Day, Tibetans across India will engage in a mass tree plantation drive, and that's toward a green India. So the campaign is toward a green India. June 21, all of us know that the Indian government, the Ministry of Ayush, has been very keenly observing the International Yoga Day. So on this day, Tibetan schools under the leadership, under the aegis of the Department of Health of the Central Tibetan Administration will take part in the Yoga Day events organized across India. On July 6, which is the 83rd birth anniversary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibetans across India will take part in a campaign called Feed the Hungry, where they'll feed the homeless and the hungry in India on the Indian streets. And on October 2nd, which is the observing of the Swachh Bharat Day, an initiative of the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, Tibetans in India will take part in a mass cleanliness drive. And what is also unique is whenever Tibetans do these campaigns, they'll wear a t-shirt called with the caption, "Thank you India 2018," and the logo which is unveiled here. So on December 10, which is the World Human Rights Day and the 29th anniversary of the conferment of the Nobel Peace Prize on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibetans will take part in a campaign called Cover the Cold, because it's going to be the thick of winter, and Tibetans will go to the streets and distribute blankets and warm clothing to the homeless and to the needy ones. So these are the series of campaigns, but more importantly, they will flash on the social media under the hashtag Thank You India 2018 campaign. So we would like to end the briefing here, and we have quite close to 30 minutes for a question and answer session during which you can field questions to Dr. Sangye. I would really appreciate if you keep your questions brief and make it as clear as possible, clarity and brevity, and also introduce yourself and your channel. So we'll leave the floor open for Q&A. I'll go with you.
Yeah, so I have two short questions. The first is that you have spoken about the Chinese repression in Tibet. You have also said that Tibet has been under occupation for 6 to 7 decades. How would you look at this in the light of the Dalai Lama's statements that Tibetans are not seeking independence? So, do you think that Tibet is an occupied country and that you are seeking independence from China? Or what exactly could we have clarity on that? And the second question is, what happens after the time of the current Dalai Lama, who is the apex spiritual leader of the Tibetan people?
Which press do you represent?
I am Sridhar from the Asian Age newspaper. So after the time of the current Dalai Lama, what is the, have the Tibetans thought of a system where you can, the next Dalai Lama, how he used to be chosen? Thank you.
Yeah. Historically, Tibet was an independent nation. I think you can go back to 9th century or thereafter, as per the treaty signed in 821 and 23. It clearly says that Tibetans will be happy in the great land of Tibet, and Chinese will be happy in the great land of China, signed by representative of the Chinese emperor and representative of Tibetan king. And then, since then, actually Tibet has its own judiciary, own tax system, own currency. Till the occupation of Tibet in 1959, we used our own currency. We had our own postal system. Not even a single case of, on Tibetan matters have been to a Chinese court. So de facto and de jure, Tibet was an independent country. So there's no dispute about that.
So you are seeking independence from China?
No, that's the historical status. Now, after coming into under China, under the occupation of China, as we speak now, the Chinese government says that sovereignty and territorial integrity cannot be negotiated. That's what they say. So hence we say, okay, we'll take that into account. Then give Tibetans genuine autonomy as per Chinese constitution and within China, that's the middle way approach. That's the middle ground of Tibet under occupation and ending the repression of the Tibetan people. So historical Tibet was independent. Now what we say is give genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people as per Chinese laws. So what we seek is genuine autonomy.
So I just seeking a clarification on this point. Has the Central Tibetan administration given up the demand for independence? Yes or no?
Yes, in the sense, what we say historically Tibet was independent. What we seek is genuine autonomy as per Chinese laws. Now, as far as His Holiness the Dalai Lama is concerned, and reincarnation is concerned, we must take into account that His Holiness is very healthy, and he will live very long. As per many prophecies and our belief and prayer, that he will live beyond 100. So I know journalists keep asking him this question, that what happens to next Dalai Lama? So he addressed that in September of 2011, where he has said, as far as next reincarnation is concerned, he will come in the form of, he could come in the form of reincarnation, then someone has to pass away, then reborn, or selection, like the cardinal selecting the Pope, high lamas will meet and select the Dalai Lama, or emanation, which is this present Dalai Lama could designate his own successor. So this is on the table. So not only we have thought through, but there is a plan. And hence this process will take place. So now, as far as China is concerned, or Chinese government is concerned, they say that, it's odd, what they say is that they will have right to select the next Dalai Lama, but not the Dalai Lama. So isn't that odd? Now, given the track record of the communist government of China, they destroyed 98% of the monasteries, 99% monks and nuns, and all the destruction that's taking place in Tibet. So their track record is very bad. As far as religious freedom is concerned, preservation of Tibetan Buddhism is concerned. So with that kind of track record, they have no legitimacy or credibility in who will be the next Dalai Lama. So it's for His Holiness Dalai Lama to decide who will be the next Dalai Lama.
Sir, as you said that you are still the refugees in India, and you are the part of Indian system you are living here. So why do you want to give the thank you India? Still you are here, you are not going away.
Now, as far as our tradition is concerned, and His Holiness Dalai Lama also advised us that keep your old friends and make new friends. Don't keep making new friends and forget your old friends. So our values are very grateful values that we have. So you should always remember your old friends who've been with you. Even among friends, even among family and couple, it's good to say thank you to your wife and husband from time to time. So hence, being in India, no country has done more for Tibetan people than this country. And from time to time, it's very important to say thank you. And we do it with all sincerity. And the reasons that we already gave you. So hence, this is our value. So we should always be thankful to our friends, and especially the dear ones. And we must have occasion to celebrate and, take part in all the major events that was listed today. So we are here, but it's a reminder to us, that we are here till we solve the issue of Tibet, but we are grateful for the government and people of India.
So are you going to meet Honorable Prime Minister and to ask him to attend any of your program?
Now this is the gift that we have. Will of universal truth. It resembles it. It's from Ashok Chakra. Also, this symbol has a lot of deep meaning. So we will be presenting this gift to the government of India. So His Holiness Dalai Lama will be here on 31st of March at Rajghat, where there will be interfaith prayer. We will invite all the major religious leaders of major religious tradition, including Muslim, Hindu, and Jain, Sikh, everybody, and then we will be presenting this gift. And whoever accepts the gift, we will be presenting. So definitely, we would like to see and welcome, and it will be great honor anyone from the government of India comes. But again, as His Holiness Dalai Lama always said, this is the value we follow. That is, we don't want to cause inconvenience to anybody. So hence, we will present the gift to anyone who will come and receive it. And we are very hopeful that someone from the government or connected to the government will come. Because we just celebrated the 80th birthday of His Holiness in 2015. And there, the Minister of Culture, Mahesh Sharma ji came, and my friend and a friend of Tibetan people, Minister of State, Home Minister of State, Kiran Rijiju ji also came. So, we are hopeful someone from the Indian government will accept this. And yes, we want to thank the Prime Minister Modi ji and all his cabinet members and the government. And also we want to thank all the opposition parties, including the Congress party, for all the support rendered so far.
Just want to ask, you said that you are practicing Gandhian way of non-violence. So what is wrong in the Buddhism non-violence, and how different it is from the Gandhian non-violence? And can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think both are the same, no? Because we follow Gandhian Ahimsa, and if you read Mahatma Gandhi's teachings, Mahatma Gandhi's speeches, he is greatly influenced by Buddhism as well.
So that's what I'm saying. Why not Buddhism? Why you pick up Gandhian?
Ahimsa has become a universal term now. So Ahimsa is associated with non-violence, and we don't want to take the ownership and say the Ahimsa that we followed is a Buddhist Ahimsa. We just want to say Gandhian Ahimsa, because Gandhian Ahimsa has become a universal term, a universal concept. So we are, subscribing to that notion. But as a Buddhist, the non-violence that we practice will be a Buddhist way of non-violence.
So you should stick to your own. Is it not that like Buddha?
This is a thank you India. We are inclusive. We are sharing.
Buddha
Yes.
is also Indian.
Well, Nepal might say something. He was born there. So Buddhism is Indian. Yes.
Yes, Buddhism.
On which ground you have given the statement?
Which on ground? India?
Against China. You called India against China.
No.
It was your statement you used before.
What did I say?
You called India against China.
No. A caution. Oh, caution. Yes. Oh, okay.
What was the reason basically?
No, what I've said is that when Tibet was occupied in 1950s and 60s, right, all the neighboring countries, including India, of course there were leaders like Vallabhbhai Patel and many other leaders who cautioned, and so we have to be careful. This expansion is designed. They're coming to Tibet, next it will be, in all the neighboring countries. And not many countries and leaders followed that advice. And we've been saying it for the last 60 years as well. After the occupation of Tibet, and this is not the end, this is just the beginning. Because I think Chinese leaders themselves have said, that many decades ago, Tibet is the palm. They must occupy. Once they occupy the palm, then they must go after 5 fingers. And 5 fingers are Sikkim, Bhutan, Ladakh, Nepal, and Arunachal. Not just 5 fingers. In between 5 fingers, there are spaces, right? That's Himachal, that's Uttarakhand, it's part of it. Hence, since 2011 or 2010, the incursion from the Chinese military in the border areas has doubled. And Doklam is one of the symptoms. You see that you read a lot about Doklam. So hence we say is that India and China are the 2 largest populated countries in the world. And as far as Tibetans are concerned, we want to see India have good relationship with all the neighboring countries and countries around the world, including China. And hence, India and China has complex and many layers of relationship. They should have good relationship, but should be careful, because they are already in Doklam. And just this morning, breaking news was that they're installing permanent setups in Doklam. And you just followed the election in Nepal. Nepal is the only other Hindu country in the world and has little bit more China-leaning government there. So if you look at Pakistan, if you look at Sri Lanka, if you look at Bangladesh, if you look at Burma, Chinese presence is everywhere. So as someone who's here as a guest, I think it's natural to nudge my host, say, hey, be careful what's going on, you know. So that's because 60 years ago we lost our country. And we don't want to see other countries or other places suffer the same consequences. So it's a caution.
So how you are saying you are still refugee? You have the Aadhaar card, you have all the facilities, everything, you are part of. Yes, you are,
Technically,
so you want some, technically that's all. You
yes.
want some special status to Tibetan people here in India?
No, it's like this. Politically and technically we are refugees because we are without a country. So once you're without a country, you are displaced. You are somewhere. So that's a technical term. It's a fact. So if you count us in the whole world, we will be counted among the 60 million refugees and diaspora around the world. That's where we fit in. But among the 60 million refugees, we are doing pretty well, thanks to India. So that's what we're saying. Yeah, I mean, Indian government has supported us. Education, our education is subsidized by the Indian government. Land and all the settlements are subsidized by the Indian government has done a lot. Do we want more? Little bit, you know. But as a guest, you know, you can hope for a little bit more. But you know, it's political, as I said, make Tibet a core issue for India, and put it on the table, and have a discussion on this issue. Because you have to address the issue of Tibet, because India's security is, you know, partly dependent on the situation in Tibet. Because when Tibet was an independent country, there was no border incursion. Thousands and thousands of Indian troops that's stationed in the border is not needed. Billions of dollars then that's spent on a weekly, monthly basis, and India can spend it on education and social welfare. All this was not necessary. And also two countries are connected spiritually. Mount Kailash, Mansarovar are in Tibet. So now that you raised the issue of refugee, we also give refuge to Lord Shiva in Tibet. So, Jai Bholenath.
There is an intelligence report that has been quoted by some media houses, and this issue was raised by His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he visited Arunachal as well, that there is a rising unemployment among the Tibetan youths. And the intelligence report cited that China may try to exploit some disgruntled youth to spy against India. As the Prime Minister in exile, do you see it is a matter of concern, or can you give us a figure if there is indeed rising unemployment among the Tibetan youth? Thank you.
Now, employment in India as a whole, India is a country 1.3 billion population, right? So there is employment, issue. So Tibetans are a small part of it. So some youth, Tibetan youth also are facing unemployment. It's just part of the same system. Now I read the report that there's IB is suspecting that some Chinese might recruit some Tibetans or people in the border areas. That's what they say. But that is also part of the same intelligence, spionage process, right? Obviously, they try to recruit people in India, and India tries to recruit people in China. And I think there's one famous case going on in America now. They have just lured that former CIA official back in America, and cases filed against him. He had a notebook of all their CIA assets in China who've been compromised and mainly killed, right? So this it's part of the process. But I do believe Tibetans in general will not be bought that easily. And if there are any who's doing it, we condemn it. We just say, we are thankful to India, don't do anything against India at all. So this is just a report that we read, and we don't know the factual accounts. And we would like to believe there's zero activities like that. But then it's part of the process, right? So there always be some bad potatoes in any community.
So what is the current status?
I think yes.
What is the current status of talks between the Central Tibetan administration and China? Are there talks taking place at all, or is there any back channel, or because their animosity towards the Dalai Lama is well known. So, are any talks taking place at all?
If you go by the history of talks, there was, in fact, in 80s, early 80s, the Tibetan delegation, including of CTA, went to China and Tibet. And then the second time, from 2002 to 2010, envoys with the Dalai Lama did meet with representatives of the Chinese government for 9 rounds of formal dialogue. But there was no breakthrough. So it ended in January of 2010. So for 8 years, there is no formal dialogue. But we would like to see the revival of the dialogue, and we would like to see the envoys of the Dalai Lama meet with Chinese counterpart to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully. So that's what we want to see. So there is no formal dialogue as of now. Now, back channel is a complicated definition. As far as we are concerned, as His Holiness said, we are transparent. Any Chinese who want to come to Dharamsala and talk to us, we are willing. We share all the information that they want to know. So through media, what we do through media, when we meet them in person also, we talk to them.
Sir, you have said before that China wants to be the number one. You have agreed that China has expansionist ambitions. And then you have also said, clarified today, that Tibet is not looking for independence, but for autonomy from China. So, and then following up, you also said that India should have good relations with China, because that is important for the regional peace and security of the continent. My question to you now is that, does the only way to have good relations with China is to agree their demand, or at least part of their demand? Because that's what seems like the case with Tibet here.
Part of our demand, Tibetan demand.
Yeah, and in general also. The only way one can be good friends with China is by agreeing to what they say, or at least part of what they say. Is that the only way with China to work around?
So you're a good journalist, because all the points that I said, you connected and put into a question. As a Tibetan, obviously, I'll say if you solve the issue of Tibet, you will have good relationship with China and India. No? So I have vested interest to say that. But generally, it's true. Because Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders have said, stability and security of China is dependent on stability and security of Tibet. So for China, is that important. And for India also, I don't want to get into regional issue, but with Pakistan, the border is very small. With China, quote unquote China, because the Tibetan border is 3,000 kilometers long. Right? So hence, security and stability of India is also dependent on that Himalayan region. Right? More incursion is taken from that area. So before Tibet served as a buffer zone between these great big nations, and both the countries didn't have to worry about border security. Now both are worrying. So, this is how it happens, right? Because when the border is so long, you just think, unless I have incursion on the other side will incur in your place. So based on this mistrust, based on suspicion, you get into this action, and this has this, way of, getting out of control. So hence, you can clearly see for both the countries, one of the major reasons why there's mistrust and suspicion is this long border territory. Right? Again, as one journalist said, IB also suspecting this spy thing, intelligence collection is going on. So hence, both sides have to address this. So hence, China has occupied Tibet. India has legitimacy and credibility to speak on the issue of Tibet. Now, if you want to go back, in 1914, Simla Convention on Tibet took place. Of course, there's Simla Convention in Pakistan, okay, but Simla Convention on Tibet took place, and the Simla Agreement was signed between British India and the Tibetan government by the Prime Minister of Tibet, Longchen Chatra. And now, on the sideline of Simla Convention, a border agreement was signed. And Tibet was represented by Tibetan Prime Minister Chatra, Longchen Chatra, and British India was represented by Sir McMahon. Hence, now India says McMahon line is the preferred border. If India wants McMahon line to be the preferred border, the signatory to that agreement is Tibetan Prime Minister, not Chinese Prime Minister. Right? So we have a claim or ownership of that treaty. And on the also sideline, a trade agreement was signed. between British India and Tibet. And if you look at Panchil, the body of the Panchil is the trade route and trade tax and all that. In the preamble, right, India and China agreed to put 5 points and call it Panchil. But actually it's the trade agreement. Okay. Now the trade agreement was supposed to be renewed every 10 years. 1914, 24, 34, 44, it was renewed between Tibet and India. But in 1954, Pandit Nehruji thought they will renew it with Beijing, and Indian delegation was signed to China. After several months, they negotiated, they came back and calling it Panchil. Actually, it's only in preamble. Body is still the trade. Okay. Now the Panchil, India wanted it to last for 25 years. China wanted it to last only for 5 years. They negotiated a lot after, and in the end they agreed for 8 years. Now that's where I said in India has to be careful, because after 5 years what happened? 1954 that was signed. After 5 years, 1959, Tibet was occupied, and His Holiness Dalai Lama had to flee Lhasa on March 17th and entered India or Arunachal in March 31st. And after 8 years what happened? 54 plus 8, 62. 62 war happened. So when the Panchil was signed, occupation of Tibet and the 62 war was almost put in there. So you are signing a peace treaty, Panchil, but the plan for war with India and occupation of Tibet was already planted there. So hence you can see, there are so many reasons why we must address this issue. And if you address this issue, a major part of India's issue can be addressed as well. Because some say because of Tibet, the China and India has some problems. But it's not so. China wants to be number one. Right? Tibet is under occupation. Why they are in Pakistan? Why they are in Sri Lanka? Why they are in Bangladesh? Why they are in Burma? This has less to do with Tibet. But one can say because they came to Tibet, they entered South Asia, and hence they are entering into South Asia in Indian territory or Indian neighborhood, right? So hence addressing the Tibet issue is crucial. And also another reason, Tibet is a water tower of Asia. 1.4 billion people in Asia is dependent on water flowing from Tibet. Brahmaputra River, lifeline for Assam, Northeast and Bangladesh, flow from Tibet. Satluj River, Indus River, Ramu River which flows to Nepal, right? Irrawaddy River, Salween River, all flow from Tibet, including Yearlong River and Mekong River, all flow from Tibet. So Tibet is the water tower of Asia. 1.4 billion, including millions of Indians are dependent on that water tower. Now, as far as scientists and environment is concerned, 50% of Tibetan glaciers are melted and disappears. By 2100, of the remaining glaciers, 75% will disappear. Now what's happening, you know, China has 19% of the world population, but only 12% of fresh water, which means 7% or already 400 million or so Chinese are facing water scarcity. India's situation is worse. Bangladesh is worse. Pakistan is worse. Now Tibet is the water tower. That's where the water comes from, whole of Asia. Right? At the moment, China has occupied Tibet. For the sake of Asia and 1.4 billion people, and all the neighboring countries should say that glacier, the Tibetan Plateau and glacier, belongs to us as well. Right? The people downstream should have right to have water. And you just don't have to go far. You look at the problem between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Haryana and Punjab and water sharing issue. Even Goa and two BJP ruled states are also disputing over water. And Tibet is the water tower. Right? So hence, even for the sake of water for whole of Asia, all the Asian countries should, ASEAN and South Asia should get together and say, we have to address this issue. So for various reasons, Tibet is very, very important.
Dr. Sangye Kallol Bhattacharjee from The Hindu. My question is regarding, again, Doklam, since you have mentioned it. As you know, Doklam is actually a territory of Bhutan. And the Chinese are building very large infrastructure there, military infrastructure there. I want to ask you, what is your suggestion for Bhutan? What should Bhutan do? Should Bhutan go to the United Nations and take it up?
I think
Because as a small country, what are the options before Bhutan? I mean, of course, you know that India, China face off over Doklam. But then what should Bhutan do?
as I said, the term Doklam, it's called Thoklam or Thokla, is a Tibetan word. So Tibetan might say that whole territory might belong to Tibetans. Again, there's one historian has written that part of the territory was given as a gift by Dalai Lama to a person of Tibetan heritage from that area, Sikkim area and Bhutan area. So now I know Bhutan is in a very difficult situation. It's a landlocked country. It's sandwiched between China and, before Tibet, now China and India. I think, going to UN could be one option. But having said that, Philippines won the case in the UN tribunal, and the judgment was in their favor, and they are not acting on it. And China is already saying, we don't care about the UN judgment anyways, right? So we know recently when President Xi Jinping went to Hong Kong, essentially Chinese government declared that the treaty with Britain, as far as transfer of Hong Kong is concerned, and the agreement that they had is not binding now. Why? They choose not to agree and not to be bound by it. So this is what you're dealing with. So I'm sure Bhutan is looking at Philippines as saying, even if you win, you don't win much. You just win that decision, but there will be no actual implementation. So going to UN is one option, definitely.
If I may just ask one more question, so my final question.
Sure. Is that your final question?
It's my final question. Now that you are going back 60 years, you are tracing the roots of your flight from Tibet to India. Can I ask you that the decision taken by India several decades ago to acknowledge that Tibet was part of the People's Republic of China, do you consider that to be a historical mistake? Because now the Chinese argument is that if Tibet is part of China, then Arunachal is South Tibet and Arunachal also belongs to China. So do you consider the Indian decision taken several decades ago to acknowledge or concede that Tibet was part of China, do you think that's a historical mistake?
No, that's not the language. I think that there are several versions, and the most cited version is that Tibet is an autonomous region of People's Republic of China. But as far as historical status is concerned, Tibet was an independent country. So any country, including India, whoever says Tibet was historically part of China is wrong. So that we will not accept. But I think one should look at the debate that took place in 1950s and 60s. Really, there were great Indian leaders, including Ballabhai Patel and the others, who contributed a lot. There was a lot of wisdom in that. And there are a lot of foresight. The expansionist design that we're talking about was very much discussed. The parliament openly said Tibet is just the beginning, that it will be us. So that's what we say, It's 60 years is still not too late. It began with Tibet. That's what I say when I travel around the world. It began with Tibet. You never said anything for 60 years. Now it ends with you. So definitely, and this is the expansion design that's coming. So historically, Tibet was an independent country. Anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
But you would like to call it a mistake.
Pardon?
But you would like to call it a mistake by India.
Not just India. So many countries have said that, right? They just kept quiet. Why just point out India only? There's so many other countries who just stood by, and said, well, in fact, Great Britain, they were the witness, or they had the evidence to say Tibet was, if not de jure, de facto independent. In fact, they were the one who coined the word suzerainty. So Tibetans did not have sovereignty, but they had suzerainty. They, in fact, quote unquote, what they call corrected it. Rather, we say they took a back step. I think just a few years ago, they said, oh, they took the word suzerainty also. So it's not just India is alone on this. So many other countries have done that, including Great Britain, who in fact were the witness. Their documents which said Tibetans have suzerainty over Tibetan region, and they backtrack and changed, rewrote that. Thank you very much.
All right,
So hopefully, with this Thank You India year, we just want to convey to all our brothers and sisters in India that we are very grateful and thankful. And Tibetans in all the settlements, young and old, will be participating. We have been part of the family, but we will make our presence felt in a very good manner based on Tibetan values and tradition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Dr. Sangay. Thank you, Kumslam Nubutakula. Thank you all for coming. I have a few people to thank. First of all, Canto Communications, Gayan, Bhavina, Misha, and two others who have come here. Thank you for bringing in an impressive turnout of media. Thank you to the Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama based in Delhi, especially the press officer Tibettv, who holds the joint secretary position as well. He's also been reaching out to the press. The Inter-Tibet Coordination Office based here in Dharamsala and its head Kamathai Gilla, the settlement officer of the new Aruna colony, Mashtaka Camp leader Kartela. I would like to acknowledge their presence